Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, if I can just get your attention, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the funeral service will be commencing momentarily. This is just a friendly reminder to please take your phone out and put it on silent. I'd just like to let you know as well, for those of you that are standing in the back, that there is additional seating downstairs. Everything is being live streamed for everybody's reference. Once again, please put your phone on silent, and the service will start within about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Philip Hills, and I am one of the pastors at the church that Bob and Ruth have been attending. And so I want to thank you for coming today. This is an important day for the family. It's a day to remember. It's a day to celebrate. It's a day to mourn. And it's also a day to think about ourselves, our lives, to look forward. And my prayer for you is in this day of mourning that you might actually leave this morning with hope. Let me pray as we begin our celebration and mourning. Oh God, thank you. Thank you that you're here now in love, in mercy, in kindness. And I ask God that you would help us. Help us to remember. Help us to be grateful for a life well lived. Help us to think about us, our lives, our relationships, our families, and how we're living those lives now. And I ask God that we would be able to mourn well and think forward. In Jesus' name, amen. The first person I'd like to welcome to the mic is John Monk, a family friend. He is going to share the eulogy with you.
Everybody hear that okay? Good morning, everybody. My name's John, and I'm a friend of Bob and Ruth and the Kwak family. Thanks for being here today as we celebrate the life of Bob Kwak. On behalf of Bob's family, I want to thank each and every one of you for your love, support, and for taking the time to be here today. Your presence means so much and is a reflection of the many lives Bob touched. Larry and Corey have written this thoughtful eulogy, and I'm proud to read this for their families. It's truly an honor to stand here today and share a little of Bob's remarkable life. On May 27th, 2026, Bob passed away peacefully at the Holmberg Hospice House in Abbotsford, following a courageous battle with glioblastoma, an aggressive form of brain cancer. It's impossible to capture someone's life in just a few words, especially someone like Bob. He wore many hats throughout his life: a skilled tradesman, successful business owner, sportsman, loving husband, proud father, grandfather and great-grandfather, brother, uncle, and loyal friend. Bob was born on August 13th, 1950 in Abbotsford, becoming the firstborn to Frank and Lena Kwak. 2 years later, his sister Sandra was born. Haven't seen her yet. Sandy, followed by his brothers Brian and Mark. The family spent Bob's early years on a dairy farm in Sumas Prairie before moving to Matsqui Village. Growing up in a small, close-knit community, they got to know their neighbors quickly and made some friends that would result in lifelong friendships. At 16, Bob decided to leave high school and head up north with his friend Graham Gardner. I don't know if Graham's here. No. Okay, sorry. To pursue an opportunity to learn the trade of welding and fabrication. On his return to Abbotsford, he quickly found work and earned the reputation as a skilled tradesman in the industry. He worked for several companies, including Valley Right Mix and Lafarge. In 1968, Bob met Diane Botter at the Dog and Suds Drive-In, where she was a waitress. It wasn't long before they started dating, and then they got married in 1969. Like most things in Bob's life, things happened quickly. With a short time frame, they welcomed 2 sons, Larry and Corey. As young parents at the age of 18 and 20, Bob and Diane and the boys were a young family who were fortunate to have the help, love, and support when needed from Frank and Lena, as well as Bob's sister and 2 brothers. In 1981, Bob and Brian, while still working their regular jobs, took on a land clearing contract for the Department of Highways, who were preparing to construct the Abbotsford Mission bypass and needed trees removed. They bought some equipment, hired some help, and oversaw the completion of the contract. They named their company BK Tree Services. One thing led to the next, and as they kept getting more work, Bob made a decision to devote himself to the tree service full-time. This one's got larger font. One thing led to the next, and as he kept getting more work, Bob made a decision to devote himself to the tree service full-time. Under his leadership and with the help from his son Larry, the company grew into a respected residential and BC Hydro tree trimming and removal business. Bob took pride in the business he built and all the people he worked alongside him. As someone who didn't like to leave things unfinished, Bob went back to school in his 40s to earn his GED. His desire to learn and grow served him well. In 2005, he became a certified arborist and started a new company called Central Valley Arborist Consulting. Soon after, Brian also would become a certified arborist, assisting Bob and growing the company. Sandra, Bob's sister, did the bookkeeping. It was an opportunity for them to work together and stay connected. Bob continued working and remained dedicated to his customers and his profession until his illness progressed, and he no longer could oversee the day-to-day operations. In December of 2025, Brian took the reins of the company, preserving the values and commitment to excellence that Bob had established. Today, the business continues to thrive and stands as one of the many ways his legacy lives on. Bob was fortunate to have so many close friends and business associates. He valued their friendship greatly. The relationships he built over the years were a reflection of the kind of man he was. Throughout his life, Bob was always active. He loved the outdoors, especially navigating shallow, fast-flowing rivers, where he spent many autumns hunting and fishing. He also enjoyed golfing, trap shooting, curling, scuba diving, and skiing. He played men's fastball for many years alongside Mark and Brian as a skilled catcher. As a father, Bob played a big role in Larry and Corey's lives. When they were young, he made sure they were always busy in sports. Whenever they had a break from their sports, he would leave a list of chores for them to complete before dusk. He taught them how to use their hands and not shy away from hard work. To this day, their strong work ethic, perseverance, and drive are in part to the lessons learned from their dad and the life he lived by example. Bob also shared with his sons the importance of caring for others, being there when your family or friends need you, and to appreciate life. As the years went on, Larry and Corey appreciated the special relationship they had formed with their dad. They each spent many years with him enjoying hunting, fishing, and golfing. Along with Corey's wife, Lisa, and Larry's wife, Karina, they have so many special memories of travel and time spent together. One of Bob's greatest joys was being a grandpa to his grandchildren, Megan, Jessica, Brian, Haley, and Shelby. They all have special memories of spending quality time with him. He is also a very proud great-grandpa to Maya, Tyson, and Jordan. They all had a special place in his heart. Through marriage, Bob's family grew even larger. Ruth's daughters, Emily, Amanda, and Amber, became his daughters in his heart, as well as their spouses, Brent, Tim, and Mark, and grandchildren, Charlotte, Matthew, and Ben, I believe are all here today. Ruth's entire family was important to Bob, and he loved spending time with them all. Bob was blessed to spend 26 wonderful years with his wife, Ruth. They shared a close, loving marriage built on friendship, trust, laughter, and a genuine enjoyment of spending time together. Bob loved that she embraced so many of the hobbies and interests that meant so much to him. They spent many days on the Fraser River and got to know where all the good fishing spots were, as they operated a fishing guiding business for years called First Cast Adventures. One of the greatest gifts Ruth gave Bob was a passion for world travel. Under Ruth's encouragement and excitement to explore, they got to experience so many incredible places and create so many unforgettable memories. They traveled every year, often spending about 2 months in Costa Rica. Their adventures also took them to Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, and many countries throughout Europe and Africa. The African safari was definitely a highlight. Closer to home, They shared many hunting trips through the mountains and rivers of BC and spent countless days traveling along the shoreline of the West Coast aboard their ocean boat. These adventures brought them tremendous happiness, and they were so grateful that they shared them together. Bob believed in giving back and supporting many charities in his lifetime. Various children's charities, Holmberg Hospice House, the Sheep Society, and Ducks Unlimited, to name a few. Their families feel incredibly blessed to have had such an extraordinary man in their lives. His strength, generosity, wisdom, sense of humor, and love of life have left a lasting impression on them all. Although he's no longer physically with us, they take comfort in imagining him reunited with his parents, Frank and Lena, and with the many family members and friends who went before him. His spirit will continue to guide them, watch over them, and his memory will live on in the stories shared, the lessons he taught, and the love he leaves behind. Bob will forever hold a special place in their hearts, and he will be deeply missed.
Now I'd like to invite Corey to come and reflect on his dad.
Okay, I got some here, thanks. Hey, good morning. I'd like to start by telling a little hunting story. My dad and Larry loved to go hunting without me. I know it sounds weird, right? I don't think they thought I would take it serious enough, but finally one day I got invited to come along. I remember it was a crack of dawn. We got out of the truck, and before we head out, my dad says, "Okay, Corey, there's 3 things you need to know when you're tracking an animal. Number 1, stay upwind and be quiet." He says, if they smell or hear you, you won't even see him because he'll be gone. Number 2, track ID. You can tell what kind of animal you're tracking and the size of it by the shape and depth of their tracks. So far, so good. Number 3, poop ID. Another way to tell what kind of animal you're tracking is by the shape and size of its scat, AKA poop. So Larry said, "Corey, do you like glacé raisins?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "Well, that's deer poop." And he says, "Corey, do you like glacé peanuts?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Well, that's elk poop." Then he said, "How about glacé almonds?" I said, "Not anymore." He said, "Well, that's moose poop." And my dad says, "That's right." He says, "But the most important thing is," he says, if it's steaming, you know it's close." So we throw a little grass in the air and find out which way the wind's going. We spread out and walk along this trail as quietly as I could be, and I feel a poop coming on. So I do my business on the side of the trail. I look back, and I see it steaming, and I said, "Wow, he wasn't kidding." So I quickly go find my dad, wave him over, and I say, "Dad, come and check this out. I seen some fresh scat, and it's steamy." So we're both bent over and looking at this, and I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" He grabs a stick, he starts pushing it around, looking for evidence, and I said, "You think it's a wolf?" He said, "Maybe." I said, "You think it's close?" He said, "Oh, it's real close." I said, "Well, it's closer than you think because it's my shit." So he gets up, he throws a stick in the ground and looks at me and says, "There's something wrong with you." And I said, "Well, I think you spend too much time in the bush because you can't even recognize your own son shit." Anyways, I'd like to say thank you to John for reading my dad's eulogy. I know that would have meant a lot to him as he cherished you as a friend, hunting companion, and respected your wealth of knowledge in the tree industry. He probably got a few phone calls, eh? Yeah. You like the phone. Anyways, BK loved life. He worked hard, played hard. He loved meeting new people. Anywhere we'd go, he'd always be talking to someone he met on the street or in a restaurant. He's curious about where they were from or where they're going or what they're eating, if it was any good or not. Most of all, he loved the outdoors, always up for the next adventure. He liked competition. Whatever the activity was, he would always turn something into a bet, right? He was resourceful. If you ever got lost, he'd find the way. If you had a mechanical issue, he'd figure it out. If there was something he couldn't do, he knew a guy who could. And if you ever outnumbered at the bar, he'd be right behind you, back you up. He was a survivor, he was tough, and he was one of the best looking 75-year-olds I've ever seen. Not sure what kind of skin cream he used, but do tell. He hated missing out on a good thing too. If you ever, you never had to ask him twice to come along somewhere fun. If he could make it, he was in. BK was always busy. As soon as he would finish something he's working on, he'd move on to the next thing. I remember one day we were on his ocean boat after he spent the morning getting everything organized and then navigating his way to a perfect fishing spot. He would park the boat and then make sure everybody had a fishing rod rigged up and a drink in their hand. He was always a host. Then he'd finally pour himself a drink and sit down, and after one sip, he'd say, that tastes so good. And then he'd bounce back up and he'd do something else right away. I said, Dad, I think you need to make a new rule. He said, what's that? I said, when you finally pour yourself a drink, I think you should enjoy it. Sit down and finish it before you get back up. He said, hey, you're right. That's a good one. I like that rule. But I don't think it ever did happen. BK always had a notepad with him. Right, Ruth? Yep. He'd always make a list of things to do each day, and he was focused on getting them done. If he had an appointment for something, he'd usually be late for it because he would stop somewhere along the way to cross one more thing off the list. I remember Ruth would say, Bob, you don't have time for this. You're going to be late. People don't like when you're late. You're always late. And he'd say, oh, no, we got time. That'll just take a second. He was always in a hurry, so many things to do, so many places to be. So things like traffic jams or lineups were definitely not part of his plan. You probably know if you've been with him before. Watching him in an airport was always interesting. Usually within the first few minutes after assessing how slow the lineup was moving, he'd make his way up to the front. I'd look at Ruth and say, hey, what's he doing? She'd say, it's okay. This is what he does. He doesn't do lineups. Just wait and see. He'll get us through. Sure enough, a few seconds later, I hear a come on up. Comes up to the front of the line, bypassing everybody. Not sure how he did that or what he said, but I just remember thinking, how does he do that? As we're walking to the gate, I asked him, I said, hey, Dad, have you ever thought about getting Nexus? He said, I don't think I'd ever use it. But I saved you an hour waiting in line. I think you better buy me a beer. If you told him he couldn't do something, he'd definitely have his attention. He loved the challenge. He'd often prove you wrong, too. Yeah, BK did things his own way, but if you gave him more than a minute, he'd be sure to win you over. He was a charmer, impossible not to like, one of a kind, lovable, and fun to be around. To me, he's truly unforgettable. I feel so lucky to have had him in my life. So many great memories, especially traveling to so many places together over the years. One local trip in particular stands out. Bob and Ruth took Lisa and I and our girls, Hallie and Shelby, on a 7-day boating trip to the islands of the Sunshine Coast. We anchored down, slept on the boat, set prawn and crab traps, fished for cod and salmon, kayaked, took a tender to the shore to explore the islands. It was definitely a highlight for our two girls who got to see and appreciate firsthand how beautiful a place we lived in and how cool it could be to spend time with their grandpa. Thank you for being you, Dad. I love you. I miss you, and the memory of you lives on.
All right, I would like to ask Emily, Amanda, and Amber to come forward.
Yeah, I heard water helps you not to cry. Okay. Is that the right height? Okay. Hello, and thank you all for being here with us today to celebrate the life of Bob. For those of you that don't know us, we are Ruth's daughters and Bob's stepdaughters, Emily, Amanda, Amber. For nearly 30 years, Bob wasn't just part of our family. He helped shape it. He came into our lives through marriage to our mom, and through our teen years and early adulthood, he remained a constant in our worlds as we moved into midlife. Over this time, he became someone we could count on, laugh with, and share life's adventures with, and challenges. He was quick to lend a hand and had our backs if we ever needed it. While he may have entered our family as a stepfather, to us he was much more than a title. Bob lived life with enthusiasm. If there was an adventure to be had, he was ready for it with our mom right alongside him. Whether they were setting up camp for a month beside the Fraser River to fish, hunting at Gang Ranch, going up the Kachika, traveling with family and friends to Costa Rica, Australia, Malaysia, or going on their bucket list trip to Africa, they found joy in living and making the most of every day. This was further seen this past year when they put on around 10,000 kilometers in their motorhome through the states from Walmart parking lots to the Grand Teton Mountains. Adventurers were everywhere. But what made Bob truly special wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. Social is an understatement, and Bob had a way of making everyone feel welcome. He could strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere, and leave them feeling like they had known him for years. Bob would often be found inviting people back to their house or inviting himself back to theirs. When going boating with Mum and Bob, it became evident that they knew people in many of the coves they anchored in, finding kayaks to borrow and hiking trails leading to social opportunities with friends from previous trips. His smile, his laughter, and his ability to bring people together are things we'll never forget. If there was music playing, chances are Bob was dancing. He reminded us that life wasn't meant to be watched from the sidelines and taught us that memories are made by saying yes to life's adventures and by sharing those moments with the people you love. When a school project required clips of dancing, Bob embraced the challenge enthusiastically. Even when on holiday in Costa Rica, he and Mum each sent solo dancing clips, highlighting their moves, regardless of what the neighbors may have thought. That was a good video. Family meant the world to Bob, and he loved us, sharing in our joys and sorrows as if they were his own. Bob was very proud of his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. Yeah. As we reflect on our many years with Bob, we realize that the greatest gift he gave us was the example he set. He showed us how to live fully, laugh often, cherish family, and appreciate the beauty in the world, and take no poop from no one. Sometimes people don't realize the impact of a person in their life until that person is gone. With Bob, we knew. We are grateful to have been part of his world and him part of ours. Today, our hearts are heavy because we will miss his voice, his stories, following along in his great adventures. We are thankful for the many meals, card games, and conversations shared with one another. Bob, thank you for loving our family and for the memories that stay with us forever. Your life touched so many people, and your legacy will continue through the stories we tell, the traditions we keep, and the love you gave so freely. Watching you make a public declaration of your faith through baptism gives us confidence that we will see each other again. We will miss you deeply.
But we will carry you in our hearts until we meet again.
So close.
Lots of years ago, I was at a funeral. It was for one of my wife's many uncles. And the pastor got up and did his message. I remember sitting there getting the impression that maybe the pastor hadn't really met Karen's uncle. And that was confirmed because we went to the reception after the funeral, and her Uncle Pete turned to me and he says, "Now I know." And I said, "Uncle Pete, what do you know?" He said, "People lie at funerals." And I thought, yeah, absolutely. So often when we come together to remember a life, we remember the life in a way that maybe doesn't fully represent them. Well, the good thing about Bob is that he was so big in the way that he lived his life that it would be very hard in a place like this with people like you to lie about Bob. Bob was a big personality who lived a really big life. And I'm just going to stand here and be really honest with you. I only met Bob at the end of his life, in what might be considered some of his hardest days. I got an email from Ruth asking if someone would be willing to baptize Bob because he wanted to articulate his faith, not just for himself, but for his family. He wanted his family to know that he had hope, that he had a future, that this life is not the only life. In fact, there's a better life coming. And so I got the privilege of baptizing Bob. But even better than that was the days after his baptism. because I reached out to Ruth and Bob and I said, hey, you know what? This is tough. I'd love to just come and hang out with you sometimes, whenever you need it. And the thing that was amazing is that every time I went over to their place, usually they were having a hard day. That's the reason I showed up. But by the end of our visit together, we were all having a really good day. And I want to explain why. One of the things that I loved doing was hearing stories about their lives. And I remember one story in particular that some of you will be familiar with. It happened on that river up in the Yukon that they love to go to. And I won't tell you who was driving the boat because you'll figure it out. But they were on the river on the boat, and Ruth's grandfather was there, and Bob was there, and one other member was driving the boat. And unfortunately, there was a miscalculation as to how to negotiate this sometimes very dangerous river. And as a result, the boat kind of bottomed out and hit some rocks and began to sink. And as a result, Bob went into emergency mode and said to Ruth, just get to the other side as fast as you can. And they did manage to make it to a bit of a gravel bar at the bottom of the cliff. And Bob, being Bob, knew that there were things that they needed to do if they were going to survive. One of them was to get into the water. The boat by then was underwater, and to get food for them. They had a moose on the boat. I think they had two. And so they had to take some moose and get them up so they'd have food, and then make sure that they were able to light a fire. Unfortunately, because they were on a sandbar, there wasn't much in the way of wood. So the fire wouldn't last very long. And then they had to get in touch with somebody to come and rescue them. Because for all of his skill and all of his outdoorsman competencies, he knew that there is no way by himself with what they had that they would survive this. And so they spent a really cold night together. But because he was able to get a signal out and because he was able to get help, sure enough, search and rescue showed up with a helicopter and they were safe. Now, some people would say, that's enough. But Bob said, let's fix the boat. They did. And it never happened again until that beaver dam, but I won't get into that. The point is that Bob lived a big life. And in his last days, Bob had a lot of legitimate questions about the life to come. He really wondered about what was ahead of him. More than that, he was haunted. And one of the things that haunted him, one of the things that haunts all of us if we're really engaged with our lives as we get older, was things that he had done. He had lived a big life. He had lived a good life. He had been a loving father and a loving husband. But there were things in his past that he couldn't get past. There were things that he had done in his life that he couldn't forgive himself for. And I remember one of our meetings in particular, he became very honest with me. There was no pretending. There was no hiding his past. He told me what he felt were some of the worst things he'd ever done in his life. And I want to share with you a quick story from the Bible that defines my approach to giving Bob hope in that moment, and hopefully giving all of you hope in the same moment that will come your way, because it will. And here it is. So here we have a story about Jesus. One of his best friends is very, very sick and about to die. And all the family wants is what the family wanted for Bob, healing. I remember Ruth saying, I want the big answer. I want the big answer. And we prayed for the big answer. We prayed for a miraculous intervention. Bob was too young to go. There were too many things, too many adventures for him to live out yet. And so we asked for the big answer in the same way that Lazarus' sisters begged for the big answer. And Jesus did what he did for Bob. He didn't step into the middle of the pain and suffering. He just let it happen. And Lazarus died. And Jesus shows up. And the women are confused and they're angry and they don't understand why somebody who had as much power as he did would just let his brother die, or let their brother die. And so Jesus shows up. And he says, responding to Martha, I know that he will rise again at the resurrection on the last day. Jesus says, I'm here to help. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. And then he asks a very profound question. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Well, here's something that some of you don't know. Before Bob's last moments, he believed in the resurrection. He believed in the life. He believed there was another day coming for him that would never end. I remember the very, very last time I saw Bob. It was a day before he died. And predictably, he was in pain and he was agitated and he didn't really want to see anybody. And Ruth said, Bob, it's Phil. Why don't you just give Phil a few minutes? And he agreed. And I sat down with Bob and I grabbed his hand. And I acknowledged this is hard and it's not right. And you shouldn't be lying in this hospice room. But I have something to tell you, Bob. Because you decided that this promise Jesus made, I am the resurrection and the life, is true. Because you realized that you need forgiveness. See, on that day that we were sitting and he was sharing with me some of the worst thing he's ever done, I said, Bob, this is what makes my faith different from every other religious point of view in the world. Every other religious point of view says this, well, do your best. Go to the service, say your prayers, be a good person, be the best person you can be, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be good enough. And I said, that's not what I believe at all. I believe we are not saved by how good we are for God. We're saved by how good God is for us. I said, Bob, Jesus lived a perfect life. He never failed. He never gave in to temptation. He never blew his top when he was frustrated. He consistently loved and followed God, even when God said, I want you to die for the people that hate you. And then he willingly laid down his life as a sacrifice for sin. And then he rose again from the dead. He's alive. And Bob, by believing that, you can have that life too. It's not how good you've been, Bob. It's how good God is. And on that moment, in that morning when we were talking about the worst things he'd ever done, Bob just said, you're right. I believe it. I believe it. I believe I'm forgiven. I believe I'm loved. I believe God is good. I believe he's better than anybody hardly ever can guess. And I hold to that. And so on that second last day of his life, we talked about it again. And I said, Bob, you're standing at a door right now. And every part of you just wants to go through the door and have it all done. Either by being instantly healed, getting out of this bed and going home, or by walking through the door into the next life. And I said, Bob, Jesus is on the other side of that door. And when you see him, you will understand. This life is just the starting place. It's just the title page of our existence. The life to come is the real life we were made for. A life of love, a life of beauty, a life of perfection beyond our wildest dreams. And the one thing that I love telling Bob about is the way the world will be when Jesus comes back. I said, do you love rivers? They're going to be rivers. I think there might even be hunting, but I won't go there. But whatever it is you find your deepest pleasures in, that is what God is making for us. See, when Jesus died on the cross, he didn't just die to save our souls and elevate us to an eternal church service, because even church people couldn't stand that. What he did was die so the whole world could be made what we all want it to be. A place where our bodies are perfect and beautiful and indestructible. A place where there is no disease, there is no suffering, there is no brain cancers, there is no betrayals and heartaches and brokenness. A place where we are loved and we love perfectly, and a place of endless adventure. And on that second last day of Bob's life, I said, you're heading to that endless adventure very soon. So here's what I want to end with. The words of Jesus. Do you believe that? Bob did. And I want to tell you something right now, and I will stake my life on this statement. If somehow I could have reached out to Bob this morning and said, Bob, do you have a final word for everybody that's going to come to your memorial? What would it be? I think Bob would simply say to everyone here, believe. It's real. I want you to be with me forever. You see, it's not the good people that go to heaven. It's the real people that go to heaven. The people that say, I don't deserve this. I've done some really stupid, awful things with my life. But I believe God loves me. I believe he's done everything possible for me to have a resurrection. And I would love to have everyone I've ever known experience that and discover this place and enter into their real lives forever. Let me pray for you. Oh God, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that I had the privilege of spending Bob's last few months with him and getting to know him and Ruth. I thank you for those beautiful moments that we shared together where there would be a sparkle in his eye and he was looking beyond me, not to the beautiful mountain views across from his house, but to something bigger and more beautiful and more real and eternal. And he could see it. And it's what helped him through those hard last days. And it's where he is waiting now. And I thank you, Jesus, that you are the resurrection and the life. I thank you, Jesus, that you love everyone in this room. And you desperately want everyone in this room to know you as the resurrection and the life. You want them to experience your love, your mercy, your forgiveness, your joy, your peace, your beauty, your glory forever. And so I would ask for that, God. Maybe not today. Maybe not right now. But before they walk through that door, I pray that they would walk through the way Bob did, with joy, with hope, with a future that will never end. In your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen. Ruth.
Okay. How do I follow all this? I don't know. Right, John?
Hang in there, Ruth.
Well, I had a speech written, but they've...
Bob, you said we weren't gonna be late, I know.
Oh, thank you.
We weren't gonna be late.
That's what he does, Dan. That's what he does.
Got here as quick as we could.
But thanks for bringing him. You know him, he's always late. You know, I had written thanks, Bob, for making it finally. That was the only thing we ever used to fight about. I finally figured out bring my own car when we're going to go places. You come on Bob's time, right? Richard would always ask me, is this Bob's time or your time? Bob's time. Anyway, I did write something, but Corey's covered a lot of it. My girls have. I'm just going to and just speak from the heart. And if I break down, Dan can carry me off. We'll leave Bob
Not
here.
sure what's in the heart, but
Yeah. Yeah. He's left a big hole. You probably all know that. How do you feel it? You don't. You just have to navigate through it. But I was very honored to meet Bob. I didn't know him in his 20s or his 30s when he was a worse redneck than he already was. And when he would pick out fights, and my brother Vic always said, give Bob a beer, and when someone crosses him, then we got a fight going. Because he knew him from the old bar days and everything. But it was interesting. I asked Bob, I said, he quit smoking when he was 30. He said, I've got these 2 boys to take care of. I am going to not go to bars. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to start another business. And he felt very honored to be able to take care of those boys, Larry and Corey. And yeah, he was allergic to lineups also. Corey brought me that. He used to come in the coffee shop and he would get all my customers upset. So I said to Bob, you know what, you're working just over there. Come in, get your own coffee. We'll square up at the end of the week. And it did a lot of good for business. He just would go behind the counter, grab his coffee and go. Even my people that worked for me would hide in the back as they go, oh no, there's that guy coming in. And the girls would run, and I would like, oh, okay, I'll take care of him. But he was a good guy, and you could always phone him. He'd always help you out, no matter what it was. He would drop everything and be there for you. And he was definitely a redneck. He softened a lot through the years that I got to know him. And family was huge for him, huge. And yeah, that story, like, I remember we used to go hunting, And at one point, the girls would come to say goodbye to me when I was going up. I said, oh yeah, I'm going. And they said, well, we have to say goodbye to you as if it's the last time we're gonna see you because you sunk the boat, then you jumped over a beaver dam and landed on a gravel bar, and you were there for getting the boat off, first we had to unpack the boat onto the gravel bar, get the boat in that little bitty water, put the two moose on the boat, back in the boat, all this stuff back in the boat, and then, oh, I have to tell you this story because you're gonna get a hit at this one. I gotta tell them, should I tell them the beaver story? So anyway, we're going down, and we had gone up hunting, and a lot of these tributaries go into the main river of the Kachika. So when we get somewhere where other water goes in, we turn around and we look, okay, it's the second one from the right, and we come down, because there's only one right way. Second from the right. We're coming down, and I said, Bob.
You want to tell them where the Kachika is?
Oh, Kachika's way at the north. It's way up by the Yukon-BC border.
When you're nowhere, it's beyond that.
It's beyond that. You're in the middle of nothing. There's no, like, you have to be able to fix your boat. And Bob could fix anything. Even if he had to jackal it onto the side, he could put a new impeller in. He could fix anything. So I was never worried. But we came down, and I said, Bob, it's the second from the right. He said, no, it's the right. I said, no, it's not. It's the second. Take the second. No, he took the right. Bad choice. We got in, pretty much 100 feet, came around the corner, and the thing went to a little wee trickle. I mean, it's skinny water. We call it skinny water. And we're going down, and I'm going, and you can't, with the riverboat, you can't stop, turn around, and go back up where you came from. It doesn't work. You got to give her going all the way through, and you got to go on plane. So that means gunning it. If you drop on plane, you're going to be another 2 feet deeper in the water. So we're going, bushes are coming, and we had a guy on the boat with us that was interested in maybe buying a boat. And he, yeah, and he chose to come with us that year just to see what it was like to riverboat. Bad choice. So we're going around and we're standing. We never sat. We took the seats out of the boat so we could put more stuff in. And we're coming down. I'm in the middle. This guy's here. Bob was driving, and I went. We come around the corner, and there is a beaver dam. There is no more water. There's a beaver dam. Behind the beaver dam is a rock wall. If we would have gone straight, we would have been dead. There was no way. And I looked at it, and I know Bob can pull out of anything. I'm trusting in him. And he sees this one log on this beaver dam, and it's going this way. And he couldn't even pull to the right because there was no water. So he hit that thing full force, turned it, and we're all on the left side of the boat because we're going this way. We hit that, and we measured out 40 feet. We flew through the air. And I'm waiting, my old school, I'm waiting for chitty chitty bang bang where the wings are going to come out. They didn't come out. We went over that thing, and we hit that gravel bar, and we stopped dead. Completely dry gravel bar next to a little tiny pond. How are we going to get this boat, 2 moose and everything, out onto the main? Because I hiked down to see where the main river was. I put my gun on because it's grizzly there. I hiked down, and it was about 100 yards maybe, so it wasn't that far. But we had to get out of this little puddle. And this is before we had the boat rebuilt. We rebuilt it now. The boat's incredible now. But back then it was a Fraser River boat. It wasn't a boat for up there, the boat we used to have. But anyway, now we're sitting there, and Bob goes, everyone okay? This guy's standing holding this thing going, yeah, I don't think anything's broken. So Bob pulls out 3 chairs, put them on the gravel bar, and I'm going, what have I got to? I saved 3 beer. And I don't drink beer. I hate beer. 3 beer in my clothing tote, because up there, when you're hunting up there, if another hunter comes, if they see your alcohol, they'll take it, because you can't just bring it in. You either have to fly it in or whatever. You can't just, because you have weight on the boat. It's done. So if you can steal someone else's alcohol. So I had hid it in my clothing tote, and it's sitting there, and I went in there and I said, hey, guys, I've got a beer I hid. You should have seen Bob and this guy, I think his name was Matt. They were so happy with the first beer and the only beer I ever drank. I needed the beer. So anyway, now we're figuring what to do. Bob says, okay, this is what we got to do. We're going to have to jack all the boat into that little puddle of water. So we took everything off the boat. It took us hours. Jack all the boat into the water, and then we had to put everything back on the boat. And this water is like, it's just a puddle. How are we going to, we need 50 feet, Bob, to get out on plane. Not going to happen. He says, you're right, it's not. Now the jet we have now, no, it's only 30 feet. That's why we did it. Anyway, 50 feet. So he tells this guy, Bob butts up against the beaver dam, ties a bull rope on from when he was, he ties it up tight to the beaver dam. And he says to this guy, okay, when I say you're gonna cut that rope, we're gonna hopefully get somewhere on plane before we hit those rocks. And I had hiked down. I said, I'm not going on that boat. You kidding me? So I hiked down, and I said, I'll watch you come out at the end. And I'm standing on the edge by the big river, and I'm looking where they're going to come out of, and it is a little thing in the bushes. Like, where are they going to come? I don't know. And then Bob tells this guy, as soon as you cut that rope, you're gonna run to the front, through everything through the front door, and you're gonna sit on the bow to get that bow down. That was usually what I did, but he's telling this guy to do it, because I said, I'm not going on that. That's painful. So he tells this guy, so I hit down, I'm by the main river, and I hear this, and the motor is howling, like it's full force. And I hear this bang, bang, boom, and I see these bushes going, and they come out of that little hole, and the guys on the front of the boat, his face was in total terror. And they made it to the main part, and they picked me up. When we got down to the landing, the guy left to his truck. He never took his tent. He never took all the stuff. I said, well, can we send it? I don't want to even talk to you guys. You're nuts. I'm never looking at this again. It's not happening.
He didn't buy the boat?
No, he didn't do any more. Riverboating was out for him. But I knew you could always have faith. Bob would find a way out for some reason. But then we got the boat fixed, and it's never sunk since, and it's done a good job. And yeah, so yeah, that was Bob. He was an interesting character. He's a one of a kind. And how do you match that? You can't. You've got big shoes to fill, so yeah. But he's great family. I got to go into the Kwaks, which is fantastic. I remember that, I think it was Marlene that asked me, are you going to take the last name Kwak? I think, was it you? Are you going to take that name? I said, absolutely. And then when I took the name, most of my friends said, that name suits you, Kwak. You're totally nuts. You're not normal. You fit that name. Remember, he goes, that totally fits your name. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but, yeah. So, yeah, so much for my speech, Dan. I don't know if I got it all.
Well, get the important things. You sure?
Most important thing, yeah. His relations with family, friends, and God. Yeah. And you knew with Bob, and this is what bugged him, when people would make a deal and come back off of it, so you'd have to go to a lawyer and write stuff up, he would make a deal on a handshake, and if he made that deal, it was a deal, even if it was going through 5 years later. That was the deal. He made the deal on a handshake, and you could trust him. You never had to think, was he going to carry through? And you could always count on him. The girls, too. If they broke down in the car, phone him, he answers his phone, he'll be there. And that was a huge thing for Bob, and he loved everybody, and
I know you said that already.
oh, yeah. Bob was my best friend. We had a special relationship. I thank him for that. It was an honor to be his wife. I'll end with that. And it was. And I can't match him.
Okay, we are now going to watch a slideshow of Bob's life, and then after the slideshow, I'm going to say a prayer, and then we're going to get some instructions.
I'm traveling through this world of woe, yet there's no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go. I'm going there to see my father. I'm going there no more to roam. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I know dark clouds will gather round me. I know my way is rough and steep, but golden fields Got your picture on the dash, talking to it like you'd answer back. Still feels like you're just away. Not forever, not this way. Phone still holds your last goodbye. Can't bring myself to wonder why. Every place we used to go now just echoes what I know. Time moves on, but it feels so wrong. Heaven took you away. I wasn't ready. Still got your voice running through my head. So many things I didn't say. Thought we had another day. Now I'm left here asking why, while you're somewhere in the sky. Still hear you in my laugh. Still see you in every past. Little things don't feel the same since the day you slipped away. People say you're in a better place, but I trade that just to see your face. I'm trying hard to understand God's timing in his hands. Holding on, though you're gone. Heaven took you out, that's the truth. Left a hole I can't move through. Every night I say your name, hoping somehow it's the same. I know I see you down the line, but it don't ease this heart of mine. Baby, love don't end like this. Maybe it just changes distance. Heaven took you early, but not your light. I still feel you every night. In the memories, in the pain, in the sunshine after rain. Till the day I see you again, I'll carry you till the end.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamt I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was mistaken. So I hung my head and cried. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
So as Bob dances into eternity, let's pray. God, thank you for Bob's life. Thank you that he blessed so many people, that he served so many people so well, that he brought so much joy into people's lives. Thank you that the hard parts are over. Thank you that he died with profound hope. And Lord, let everybody here have that same hope one day. In your name, Jesus, and for your sake I pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a funeral director, as I look around, I see the chapel's full. I see people standing. I see people downstairs as well, watching on a live stream. This, to me, symbolizes that Bob touched a lot of people, that there was a lot of love there. Just as a universal symbol, and just to finalize the service, please join me in just simply bowing your heads. As a sign of our love, our honor, and our respect, Bob, we bow. Thank you very much. At this time, the family does invite you to a reception downstairs. I'll ask that the family lead us there first, and then everybody else just follow through these doors to your right and down the stairs. Family, please stand at this time, and we'll just follow